in the current debate over this issue of the Trinity, which has become quite a significant debate, there are so many people that have made attempts to try and defend it. Books have been written, sermons have been preached, seminars, lectures, DVDs, and all kinds of attempts to prove it. But really, if you want to prove any doctrine, you're only limited to what is available in the Bible. Right? That's really, it doesn't matter how long you talk, all your foundation proofs have to be in the scriptures. That's what we want to look at today. What are the foundation proofs, the verses that are used to prove the Trinity? We want to look at them. Does it really prove that or not? Because we want to understand the truth of the matter when it comes to this particular point. You will find that the doctrine of the Trinity, or who God is listed there as number 2 of the fundamental beliefs. So that makes sense. Well, the first one is really the scriptures, and then straight after that is the God of the scriptures. That's the idea conveyed here. And the Trinity, and then it goes on in detail. So I want to look at this, particularly in the church's website. This is from the website of the Adventist Church, and this is the definition for the doctrine of the Trinity. I want to read it, I want to keep it in mind, and then I want to see what we can learn as far as the scriptures are concerned. We're just slightly off the edge there, but doesn't matter. We'll get the main import and intent. Here's what it says. Fundamental belief number 2, the Trinity. There is one God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, a unity of 3 co-eternal persons. God is immortal, all-powerful, all-knowing, above all, and ever-present. He is infinite and beyond human comprehension, yet known through his self-revelation. God, who is love, is forever worthy of worship, adoration, and service by the whole creation. That's the definition, right? And then following the definition, we have a list of scriptural references and verses that are given to support and prove that definition. We want to explore those together, but before we do, I want to look at this definition just a little bit more in detail, because first of all, it gives us the identity of this God referred to as the Trinity. It is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, a unity of 3 co-eternal persons. And then it describes the attributes of God, immortal and so on and so forth, and why everybody should worship God. But I want to look at the identity first and foremost. Is it truly biblical that God is a unity of 3 persons, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit? In other words, all 3 make up God. Not 1, not 2, all 3. So what we're going to do today is actually very simple and very important. Let me turn my laser here on. Is this working? Great. So there are a list of verses right here, correct? We're going to look at every one of these verses. And what we're going to do, we're going to see, do these verses support this idea that the one God of the Bible is a unity of 3 co-eternal persons, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit? Fair enough? Yeah. Because these are given as the evidence and the proof for this conclusion. So all we're going to do is examine this evidence and proof. These are supposed to be the most clear and the strongest verses to prove this conclusion. Genesis 1:26. What does that say? Here it is. And God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth." You see anything there? Someone will say, well, you need to look at it closer, because it says here, God said, and then when God said, he says, let us. There you go. That's a unity of 3 co-eternal persons, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. That's the idea. Well, let's see, is the verse actually saying that? Why is God saying, let us? Obviously, God must be speaking to someone else. Now, the question is, who is he speaking to? How many is he speaking to? The idea of the Trinity would say, well, he's speaking to how many? Another 2, making a total of 3, us. And these 3 actually are united. They make up the one God. Well, who was he talking to? Very simply, we can know who he's talking to, or how many, when we look at the subject of the conversation. Because God's saying, let us make who? Man in our image. And so when God created man in his image, how many were created? Adam and then Eve. How many? 2. So how many was God speaking to? Another person. 2 individuals. The Father was speaking to his Son. He said, listen, let's make man in our image. So how many did they make? 2. Simple enough, right? So the idea is, because God said us, the idea is, well, there must be 3. Well, let me tell you something. 2 does not prove 3. If there were 3, then God would have created 3 human beings. Was that possible for God to do? Not hard, right? No, he created 2. In the image and likeness of the Father and Son. That's why God said there, let us. Now someone might say, well, hold on a minute. Okay, but the word God here in the Hebrew is actually Elohim. Hebrew word, which is actually plural. It's a plural word. Why does it say Elohim? It's because God is actually a plural. He is more than one. Does Elohim actually mean that God is more than one? That's actually an idea that most, if not all scholars, even Trinitarians, reject as a proof for the Trinity. You see, the word Elohim that is used for God is indeed a plural word, but is used with singular verbs. Meaning, and the dictionary will tell you this is a plural intensive with singular meaning. It's using a plural word to denote majesty and greatness. It's to denote power. It's not to denote plurality. And this is very common actually in the Bible. An example of this, I want to tell you, it's not here, but when God sent Moses to Pharaoh, he says, behold, I have made you God to Pharaoh. And the word God there is Elohim. Moses was a single individual person. What that was talking about was that he would have a great and high exalted position, just like God himself, Elohim. Now the Hebrews understood this very clearly. And so in the creation, we see that God actually created all things through his Son. Father and Son. 2 and not 3. We see this in a number of places. Colossians 1, 15 and 16. It says, who is, speaking of Christ, who is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of every creature. For by him were all things created that are in heaven, that are in earth, visible and invisible, whether they be thrones or dominions or principalities or powers. All things were created by him and for him. God the Father created all things by his Son. That's why in creation he said to him, let us make man in our image. The word Elohim is nothing but this plural intensive with a singular meaning. Someone would say, well, hold on. No, that's not true. It's plural as in more than one. Well, let's just check about that in Malachi chapter 2. Malachi chapter 2, at the end of the New Testament, Old Testament, interestingly enough, we have this verse. Verse 10, he says, have we not all one Father? Hath not one God created us? Why do we deal treacherously every man against his brother by profaning the covenant of our fathers? Who did Malachi understand Elohim to be? Only one God, who is one Father, created us and made us. Interestingly enough, the word here for God is actually not Elohim, it's actually El in the Hebrew. So this is not a plural word, and it's clear from the context what Malachi understood. The creator in Genesis 1, the Elohim, which is a plural word, Malachi understood to be a single individual person, God the Father. Isn't that interesting? Now, this is not the opinion of a theologian. This is Malachi, the prophet of God. Right? He understood who the God of the Bible is. This Elohim is none other than God the Father, the great source of all, who created all things by his Son, Jesus Christ.